Hi, I'm RC Jim, and yes, we're on the final approach with this repair. Getting ready to do the covering. Now we have to select which covering we're going to use, and so I came up with this dark blue for the top surfaces, and we're going to use that lighter blue for the bottom. As it turns out, of those two lighter blue ones, the one on the left was too old and wouldn't stick, so we ended up using the one on the right, and that'll give us enough to do the bottom of the wing surfaces. Make sure that the surfaces that you're going to cover are dust-free. Use a tack cloth and whatever else you might need to make sure they're nice and clean and free of any sawdust or anything like that. And of course, it's always good to work on a towel or something that has a soft surface so that you don't mar anything as you work with it. In cutting the covering, our approach is to tape it down along one edge in the position where we want it, and then straightening it out a bit, and then cutting to give just a little bit extra, enough to grab a hold of and pull it taut as we're ironing it down. Note that I've got the outside on the outside, and the stuff that's going to stick is on the other side, so it matches the shape that we're after. Okay, now we can pull off the layer of protective stuff that exposes the adhesive. Let me pop it over here. We're going to start down the middle of the wing, sort of down in here, and then we're going to go out to do the other bits. Make sure I got plenty. Yeah, looks all good. Lots of length. And just need a little bit more here to make sure I got that covered. Okay, that all looks good. Okay, we've got our iron set on 230 degrees. It can be a bit of an experimentation sort of a thing to work out what to actually use. And I want to come out here making sure that I keep plenty of overlap everywhere. Okay, so we now work from there out to the edges. I didn't get that stuck real good, did I? Okay, and I'll stick it down real good here. Admittedly, it was a bit of a pain working with this old covering, but nonetheless we endured and got it through, got it stuck on there okay and stretched out pretty good. Fortunately, the top covering overlaps this bottom covering, and so that's going to help it get held in place. But one of the things I was thinking about this was that, of course, first off, it probably would have been a lot better for me just to spend the $30 or $40 and buy some new covering. Yeah, that's a simple approach. But me being the type of person that likes to do everything that I can to utilize the materials that I've already got, I did have the thought that I could have removed the backing and then used a sprayer to spray on the adhesive that you use to stick on loose bits, the covering adhesive, and let that dry, and then it probably would stick on great. But of course that'd be a pretty big hassle to do that, and we did end up with a very nice result at the end of the day. Now that it's nicely stuck down all around the edges, we can start to shrink the inside. You can use a heat gun. If you do use a heat gun, make sure you protect the edges with something so that it can't heat the part that's being held on. But the more controlled way to do it is just to use your iron And again, you're not going to heat the edges. We're only heating the part that we want stretched. If you heat the edges, it's going to release it, and then it won't pull it tight in the middle. So you just sort of work along, and starting from one end. And there isn't hardly any pressure at all on here. If you have wrinkles with the balsa underneath, then you can wiggle around a bit. So the slow, steady movement is ideal. Right there I'm having a bit of difficulty, so I'm going to go back over onto the balsa a little bit to try and pull it from that direction as well. The other thing with a heat gun, you need to be careful you don't burn holes in it. That heat gun can get really hot, and it's harder to control the temperature with a heat gun than it is with an iron. An iron, you got a thermostat, you can set it. Okay, I had a little bit of issue in here getting it taut using the iron, so I used the heat gun for a bit. Just used it on low, was quite careful. Went around, well, I had this piece of cardboard here with a weight on it to keep the heat from going on this edge here, to keep that stuck down, and then I kept using my glove along the edge as I going along with the heat gun. Going along with a heat gun like this, and basically it's similar to the iron. You're going slowly and you're watching the covering tighten up as you go. Stuff near the edge, you can't do that with a heat gun. It's all going to come loose, and yeah, you'll have a disaster. And so I had a little bit of issue in here and a little bit of issue in there that I couldn't sort out. So I'm going to see what I can do with the iron. I think we're going to get it to the point where it looks real nice when you go out flying with it. Okay, so that one is all done. So we got one side of one half of the wing. Now, one of the things that we need to do before we get too far is that we put some reinforcing in here for where we want to put hinges. So we can't put it right on top of where the old hinge was. So we've added some reinforcing bits next to there for new hinge locations, and I want to locate those. So this is the port wing. Okay, so anywhere from here to there is okay. From here to there is okay. From here to there is okay. Well, there she is. It turned out really well. Very pleased with that. As I got ready to cover the horizontal tail surfaces, I noted that it still had some of that sticky stuff on from the adhesive of the old covering. So I used our graffiti remover, the natural set of stuff. Didn't use the goof-off one. That wasn't quite as effective. But nonetheless, as we put it on there, rub it off, and I noted that if you keep using a clean part of the rag as you're wiping it off, that seemed to help. And we got it pretty good, but it still wasn't such that the light blue covering would really stick on it very well. So I finally painted it with some water-based clear coat. And that seemed to give it a surface that then could take that covering and allow the covering to stick. So we covered the bottom surfaces of the fuselage first, then we did the bottom surfaces of the horizontal stabilizer. We actually cut off the rudder bits to be able to get that nice and secure. Then the vertical fin, got that covered, and finally the top part of the fuselage. Here we are. We've got our plane pretty well covered all over. So just a few thoughts with regard to technique, and I'm not the expert on this, You can see I've got a few imperfections here and there. But essentially, as you're covering a surface, you need to make sure you wrap it around the edge. So you got something that's stuck and stays cold or keeps from getting hot while you heat up an area like this. And on the fuselage here, in order to get that all reasonably smooth like that, essentially I had to use the heat gun. So essentially what I'm doing is when I've got it like this, I can have it down on the towel there, and you're working around, and keep in mind that you can't just heat one little spot and fix it. It's got to be pulled from all over. So you're working back and forth over a larger area, and then you keep coming back, and gradually that keeps pulling and pulling and pulling. I had some real bad wrinkles. Where were they? Up here, I guess. Really bad wrinkles up there, and I really had to work on that hard. And of course, this was wrapped over onto the front of the cockpit area here before I put the black on there. So anyway, I'm keeping the glove on there like that, and I'm working the heat back and forth and having to work right down the sides because there was too much wrinkle for just the shrinkage that could happen in a small area to pull it out. So I had to keep working way down the side to get enough pull to get that wrinkle out. Just one other thought. I had some, well, I still have some little wrinkles down here, but I had some pretty big wrinkles going diagonally across here. And with something like that, you don't fix it by going along the length of the wrinkle. Say if the wrinkles are this direction, what you've got to do, it needs to get pulled across this way. And so what you're doing, you're protecting the edge there with the mitt. Protecting the edge with the mitt. You got these wrinkles going across here like this, and you're working across back and forth this way across that area where the wrinkles are to get rid of them. So those are little tidbits that I can offer. I'm sure there are others can help you a lot more, but nonetheless, I'm pleased with that. Oh yeah, our little cover up here. I decided with regard to this, and I went and put some CA on there and kind of stuck. But I decided to cover the whole thing and then cut it out. Okay, so it's ended up a little bit ragged, and you'll see in a little bit what I'm going to do is I'm going to touch up the edges with some blue paint that matches. But basically I did my best, and it was less than perfect, but I did my best to follow the lines going around it to cut it out. And then afterwards I took the iron and just worked on getting all the edges down. There would have been a few little ragged bits here and there, and so we went all around to make sure it's all nice and stuck down around the edges. And as you work on these sort of things, you keep on seeing more can get done. So we did that all around there and all around here. Okay, now we've got the ailerons and the elevators to do, and then we'll be done. Well, we won't be done then. We're going to put some nice bright stripes and things on it. Well, we're getting ready to do a color scheme, you know, some accents and stuff. So what I'm going to be doing is this is going to be starting at the division between the dark blue and the light blue. I'm going to stick it sort of between those two ribs right there. And I've just put a little bit of sticky tape on there, the masking tape, to mark where I'm going to cut it. Okay, so I've got that one marked. Get it all lined up nicely. Okay, that's pretty straight, I think. And now I'm going to mark the bottom here. This will overlap just a bit. Okay, so it'll be less critical down here. We'll be very careful to match it up there. I'm using the melamine covered board so that it doesn't tend to steer the knife. If I use plywood or something like that, the grain in the plywood will tend to make the knife want to go wonky. Okay. And now the trick is getting the back off. Color bit is thinner than the backing bit. So I press down in the middle and go to the outsides. Okay, it's not too bad. Okay, so I'm going to cut a strip the width of this scale here. And I need about 1.5 meters of it, and the scale is 1 meter long, so I'm going to have to extend it a bit. But I got it right on the edge there, right on the edge here. Here lies my knee to help position it. Okay, and now we're going to have to extend it up here at this end. I get the knife in the slot. This end, get it right on the edge. Okay. Now the next thing I want to do is to cut a radius on the end of this. Okay, with this you don't peel it all off at the start. You want to work out our position that we want. So I'm going to do it something like that. Okay. So he's sticking down this end here. And now I'm going to get a hold of this. And this is kind of a tricky bit here. Get a hold of it with 2 fingers. So I'm going to have to be pressing this down as I go. Yeah, I didn't want that to touch yet, but I guess it's okay. Looks straight. Okay, now we want one coming back, and we're going to have to trim that off a bit. Okay. Well, here's what we've come up with for our color scheme. We've got some yellow on order for the ailerons and for the elevators. Those are going to be solid yellow, and the yellow to match this yellow. I'm liking it. And of course, underneath we've got a distinctly different sort of scheme with the longitudinal stripes on the ends of the wings. So, plus it's a lighter blue on the bottom. So that should help us to know whether it's right side up or upside down. So, progressing well. Okay, we're covering the ailerons. We just finished with one of them, and that's looking quite all right. So what we do is we've cut it to where we can cover it with one piece. We're going to have the join here where it's kind of covered up. So we're going to call that the top. So that means that this will be the top. And the top goes over last. So yeah, so the bottom is going to go on first. We're going to lap this up to there, and then the top is going to go over that to that side. I've used a straight edge to make sure that I've got a straight edge here, because this one is not going to get trimmed. It's just going to get stuck right on. Okay, so we're going to come up over the middle, but not up to the flat bit up here. So just to get it over just short of that is what we want to do. We're going to start in the middle, and then we're going to try and keep it up and go to the outside instead of pulling the iron out as we go. Okay, now going the other way. Now we've got our elevators. I'm going to do these one side at a time. Okay, looks like our bench is nice and clean. Get this on here. We want this just overlapped a bit. Just straighten it up a little bit here. Okay. We're getting ready to put the ailerons on, and previously I had marked on this cardboard the places where it's suitable to put the hinges. So we got some places where the hinges used to be that we want to avoid because there's still the plastic inside there from the hinge. So these are the places that we said that would be okay, so we've marked those on the plane. We've in turn put some tape onto the aileron and marked where that's going to be, and now we're going to put the slots in for the hinges. I might note that there is the, as far as the way these things go, there's the holes here, but there's an area where there's no hole, and where the servo is going to go is at this end, so that's where we want that bit where there's not a hole. Well, as you can see, we've had a lot going on here in the workshop. We've got our ailerons on, and they work really nice. Nice and smooth and all of that. Earlier we had built these, and I'm out of the light blue covering that I used on the back. That was that dodgy stuff, which I got rid of. But anyway, I'm just going to do those silver. You know, they're on the bottom, so it'd be kind of neutral. So anyway, I've done silver around the edges, and I've got some old stick-on silver that I'm going to try and see if it still works. If not, I might just paint them. So we've got that ready. We've got our servos ready to go into those. Oh, I might mention on these hinges where I made my neat little device. Remembered afterwards I got this Robert thing. Problem being their smallest diameter is too big for these little pin hinges that I've used. But I could have used this to get the hole started in the middle and then work from there. And I really would have, you know, in retrospect, I would have liked to drill that first little bit even wider to get those a little bit closer together. I mean, this has given me really good travel, but I'd kind of like a little bit less of a gap in there. But anyway, it'll all work. And all of these things we live and learn, don't we? We try things, and next time around, hopefully we learn a few things from it. Okay, we're pinning the hinges on for the elevators because they're skinny. I didn't feel good about drilling a great, you know, big hole into the thing and weakening that member there. So I decided to stick with the flat piano hinges, or not piano hinges, but flat pinned hinges. So we've done that. And so anyway, with these I'm pinning them. And what I do is I put the pin in until it's starting to go into the plastic hinge. I'll then trim it off. I'll then push it in the rest of the way using a flat piece of something to, you know, be able to push on it. So push it in the rest of the way to where it's still not sticking through the other side, and then I'll put a drop of thin CA on each one of those, and then we'll make sure that those things are good. Next cab in the rink is we've got a wood burner heating up here, and we're going to burn through the covering for where we have holes that things need to mount. Then we need to attach some pins to the front of our wing to fit into these holes, and we need to put some holes in the back of the wing for these. So that's going to be rather tricky, but we'll get that done. Keeping in mind this wing we had to cobble up. The original one was not the original one was damaged more than this one was, and this one was made to have two pieces going onto the side of the fuselage rather than a single piece going across. So anyway, we're modifying that. I just had a good illustration of why it's important to oil the pins on your hinges. I trimmed off the pins, left a little bit sticking out, and I'm going around with a piece of metal and a block of wood underneath and pushing them in. So I do all of that. And then I come around with my thin CA, and I'm just putting a little tiny drop onto each pinhole where they are. And as I'm moving it from this one going over to that one, a drop drops right on the hinge. And I thought, oh no, all that work. But hey, the oil has kept it from doing anything. Okay, it's still as free as anything, no problem at all. So thank you, God. Just appreciate His looking out after me for the dumb things that I do from time to time. Now we're ready to open up these holes. For this, I just got an El Cheapo wood burner that I bought online, and use this just to open up holes. So I've got the landing gear holes here, and I can see where they are and get it started, and just burn around the hole. And it seals the edge and makes the hole real nice. In setting this up, we start up here at this end. So we've built a little tray to hold a smaller servo, which I think is going to be quite adequate for what we need. That's going to fit in there. I wanted it down a little bit to get it closer to where the tube is coming. The tube can be lifted up slightly, but and if we wanted it down farther, we could space it down even more. So that's still flexible. This platform that we've made is going to get screwed onto the existing platform in there. I thought about putting it from underneath, but it's just too awkward. So just if it needs to go lower, we'll just space it down lower. At the other end, where the tube is coming out, we'll be putting a support back here to hold it in to aim it straight at the control horn. And of course we're also going to have a control rod coming from, well, from just outside the fuselage here up to there. Well, actually this is going to go to a control horn on this, so it'll be in there someplace, and then we're going to have a rod from there up to here. So we'll have to be watching with regard to that to make sure everything clears, because they're kind of overlapping a little bit. Well, I put some more spacers underneath, so those are all zapped together, and then the screw comes all the way through to the top surface there, so it'll be nice and strong. That gets it down very close to where this tube naturally wants to be. So I think I'm just going to let the tube flex from there. So we'll be screwing that down. Now I've got a servo tester here so that we can see how far it's going to go each way. So this is going to have an end on it like this. So we need room for this worst case scenario to be all the way back there. I can go ahead and glue that, and then we'll screw this in place, and then we'll work at the other end. Okay, we're done with this end now. We've sighted down lengthwise to see where we want this, and basically we want this control horn down here as low as possible. So we just carved out a little bit of the control horn in there to make sure that when it goes all the way in, it's going to clear the back of this. We want the holes on the control horn to be lined up with the center line of where it's hinging. So I've picked this spot right here, and I've put one hole in there, and I'm going to put the screw in now. So what this will do is it'll position this for us, and then we can make sure it's straight before we drill the second hole. Just verifying as I sight down these holes, it's aimed right at the hinge. Got plenty of travel both ways. Okay, so with this coming out, we want this to be parallel to that. So I just simply hold this to where it's lined up, and I just squeeze on there, and that's got it lined up. And now we'll drill a second hole. Okay, now that we've got those things through there, we can screw on the back plate onto that. Okay, that feels nice and solid. Okay, I've got that end already attached. I've put the servo into the middle position. So now we can work out how long this needs to be. And okay, let's get this halfway up. Can be adjusted from both ends. Okay, so I'd say right about there is where I want to cut it. Okay. Okay, now to get this guy in there, we use a special Dubro tool. This little guy threaded onto the bit there. And thread it into the tube. Okay, this little guy, that still looks like it's in the center. With these control rods where you got threads on both ends, you put a lock nut on one end so that end can't turn, but the other end you just leave free, and that allows you in the field to be able to make adjustments. And I like the idea of having the one that's adjusted be the one that's on the outside, where you can get it without opening up the plane. Again, you might need to make some rather quick adjustments after a flight. You'd still get it to the bench, but you'd want it to be as quick and easy as possible. Normally you'd want a little bit of flexible tube on the end of these, but these things are so hard to get apart, I can't imagine anything happening. Yeah, that's probably okay. I was thinking about doing something to hold that in. Just having a little piece of wire go through there. And let's operate the servo and see what it looks like. Okay. Okay. We got nice full travel both ways. It's not hitting anything. In order to get the wing to fit, we had to sand off a bit off of the front. And because that weakened that front part, we put fiberglass over that edge there. And that gives us the strength that we need through that part where it's thinner. We now have our 1/4 inch holes drilled in there for a nice snug fit for our dowel. And we're going to epoxy that in place. But before we do that, we're going to do a little bit of sanding here. Mainly on the edges, but just making sure that we don't have any great big bumps sticking out this way. And then we'll see about getting the holes in the right place on the fuselage. We have learned our lesson with regard to trial fits, so before we put any pegs in there or anything, we're making sure that this is going to work. So we've got our middle line scribed onto there. And by the way, in doing that, to get that down to this point here, my metal scale wouldn't bend too well going down there. So I've got this cardboard with a nice manufactured straight edge on there. And we put that, this one we worked out from measuring back, getting this line, doing a perpendicular, getting that line. And this can bend right down so that I can line it up here, bend it right down, and be very precise in getting that middle up there where it's important. So we can line up the back and line up the front. I note that if I scoot it all the way forward, it has to come up, okay, making a gap above the wing. And I don't want the gap above the wing, plus I like the wing down as much as it can be. So we're going to let it come back. And what that tells me is that when I put the pegs in there, I'll have clearance to put a radius around the epoxy where it goes in. It'll make it a lot stronger. So that's actually good to have that extra little space in there. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do, looking back here at the back, I'm going to have to locate the 2 holes for mounting the back of the wing. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some more tape on there. I love my sticky tape. Okay, so I got my sticky tape there, and I'm going to draw a line straight across that's perpendicular to the fuselage there. And I'm going to use that as a measurement point to measure out to where the holes are. Then with the wing in here where it belongs, I'm going to then measure out and establish those holes very precisely. We're now ready to measure up to where the bolt goes in. I'm amazed with this bolt as to how much slop we got. I did try some other bolts that I've got, and they have the same amount of slop. And I've also given a good solid pull, and I can't pull it out. So what that means is we got a little bit of play. Given that the bottom of the wing is down there closer where the bolt's going in, it's not much. But there's a little bit of play there. But it's pretty important that we get this dimension right from here to there. So what I've done is I've got out my cardboard again, and I've tried to simulate a similar curve that the wing is going to have coming over there, so that when I measure from here to there, we're going to get it hopefully right. And so I'm going to wiggle it back and forth and try to find a middle spot. Okay, that's the middle of the travel right there, and what I'm looking at is that the edge of the thread, when I move it all the way that way, where the edge goes compared to the end of that, when I move it this way, where the edge of that is compared to that, getting that in the middle. And then I think I want to err a little bit on having it pushed back, because you see how much of an angle we've got. You know, as far as the flat of the wing there, it's tipped up that way. So we'd like to have it back this way a bit. So that's 52 millimeters to the line here up to there. And that gives me maybe about 2 or 3 millimeters to play with. Okay, and as far as moving forward, that's fine. We don't want it to move backwards. That's another reason for picking the back end of the play. We don't want it to go backwards. I don't have any way to precisely hold the drill when we go in there. It's not like we can put some sort of jig on a drill press and do it. But I do have this device here for measuring angles, and I can get something approximate. And if nothing else, just before I drill it, I can hold this up there and get a good idea in my head as to how I need to hold that drill to get the angle that I want. You know, it's not much. So, about 10 degrees. We're now at work getting the aileron servos in place. So we've got the servo mounted inside a little panel such as that. We've got the shock absorbing mounting with the little brass tubes and the screws holding that in place. We do have enough clearance for this part of the arm down here in the bottom. You certainly want to check for that if you do have that situation, but given that it clears, might as well not wreck it up. And we got little ball links there on the end, such as what you see here. So nice little linkage there. And we've got the control horn in place. So now we're going to do the same thing over on this side. One of the things that needs to be done here is this has already got holes in here from the previous panel that was in there. And it's pretty well impossible, at least at this stage, to match those up. Yeah, if I would have been thinking, I guess I could have had this made up before. In fact, I did have it made up before I covered the wing. And I could set that on there and I could drill it from the other side and use the existing holes. But those might be a bit wallowed out anyway, so fresh holes are always appropriate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark this, and you can see as I put the tape on, I put it to where it can come off easily. I want to avoid messing up the paint that I put on there. So anyway, it's going to go in like that, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the line that I want the holes on here. So I'm going to dodge the other holes, but I'm going to have it such that that they're still going to hit on this wood tab on the bottom here. So that's the position up and down where I want them. And now this way, since I'm already going to miss those, I can put it right in the middle of the panel. It's got a little bit of slop that way. Tiny bit of slop this way, so we'll just try to center it the best that we can. Okay, and right in the middle of that panel is about there and about there. We'll drill the holes, and what I'll do is I'll start out with a fine drill and drill it through here, put it on there, drill it through there, so I got the fine hole for the threads to go into, and then I'll open this one up a little bit more on this side. In marking the location for the control horn, use just this plastic square, get it in line with this ridge on the aileron. Okay. Okay, and then that's just a millimeter or so over from this. So I just put a mark there, and that's pretty well square on from where that is. Okay, we're going to use this little guy here, and we want, ideally, the line of these holes should be straight down even with the hinge line on there. Given that this is cut back so far, I'm going to have to overlap it a little bit, but we'll get it pretty close to that spot. So with that level, I'm sighting down through the holes and thinking about where that hinge pin is, and pretty well got it right on this spot there. And that's going to allow full travel up and lots of travel down. Okay, so we had the two original holes in this first panel here, and then there's another bit of plywood behind that was epoxied onto that bit there. So I started out with a drill just a little bit smaller than the 1/4 inch needed for the pegs, and then I used a rat tail file to just file a little bit below, because I wanted to make sure that that was super tight. And I could always relieve it farther going up, but needed to start with it down. And so as it turned out, it was just absolutely perfect. As you look there, that wing is just right exactly on the line for the fuselage. Couldn't have asked for anything better. And then with regard to the bolts back here, you can see the original line that I put on there. It's a little bit farther back than where those bolts are. That was measured earlier on. But of course, later you saw me do this measurement with a 52 millimeters back from here to there. And so I went up there, I used that angle, and I put the thing on there, got the drill to where I could sight down on the angle thing that I had, and get that angle going down, and it hit it just perfect, you know. So boy, that is on there nice and snug, and I'm really, really pleased with it. So now I'll be pulling off the tape. I'll be touching up the covering where I've messed up things a little bit. Hey, we all make mistakes from time to time. I might make a few more than you do, but that's why I'm showing you the videos, so you don't have to make all these mistakes, okay? So yeah, I'm an ordinary guy that does ordinary things, but nonetheless, I'm very pleased with this thing. And of course, this is a plane that many people would have thrown in the rubbish a long time ago, and we're going to make a really nice plane out of it. So we're really happy with that. As always, prior to flying a plane, especially its maiden flight, I like to test the thrust and check the amps. Make sure we're not overdriving things. I do have a slightly bigger prop on there than it's supposed to have, so I'm a bit concerned that I could go over on the amps. I'm going to have to go to a much, much smaller prop if that one doesn't work. Of course, eventually I'll order the whichever one seems to be right. But it's good to know where we're at. So we've got a luggage scale down here that I'm going to use to measure the thrust. I've got a watt meter wired in with battery there that will be measuring the amps. And we could check the RPM as well, but the two key things are, do I have enough thrust for decent performance, and are we staying within the limits of the electronics regarding the amperage? So let's give it a go. A little bit over on the amps, and we had like a little over 3 kilos of thrust, so that's going to be okay. Our battery is just about 50%, so the amperage is definitely a concern, so I'm going to have to go to a smaller prop. Well, the plane is all finished, and boy, we're really happy with it. Great looking plane, flies wonderful, as you'll see in just a moment, and I think it's built quite well as far as being able to handle the bumps and the things that might come along the way. So let's have a look at the flight. Okay, well, we're getting ready to have our maiden flight. Kind of maiden flight. I've actually cheated and we've already had one, which is why we got a bit of stuff on the plane. But nonetheless, we'll get her up in the air and see and verify that indeed she does fly beautifully. Get the pieces put together here. Okay.
I'll be pretty close to her, it wouldn't be funny.
Yep.
These are so much fun, they really are.
Okay, here goes nothing, or something, whatever. So we will just bring it in for a landing now. And there she is. The Super Air lives again. Well, clearly I am super pleased with the restoration of this great plane. A Super Air, and it's really super to see it going again. Now you might wonder, as you consider all of the time that was put into this, I mean, you've seen a whole bunch of videos that I put together, and those videos are just a fraction of the time that I've spent doing this. And you might think, is it worth it? Well, to me, there is just something about restoration that really means a lot. Taking something that's broken, something that's ready to go into the bin, and then turning it into a plane like this, well, that just does something for me. I suppose, you know, with my Christian background, thinking about what God has done for me and the restoration that He has done in my life, yeah, that probably fits as well. But yeah, I get excited about seeing old busted up things put back together and made like new again. And well, maybe close to new. We do our best. So anyway, I'm RC Jim. I trust that this has been helpful to you and interesting. If you haven't done so already, make sure that you subscribe. Just click that little circle there. Doesn't cost you anything. Keeps these things handy for you. And then have a look at some of the other videos on our site. So you have a great day and enjoy your flying.